Okay, so today we're going to dive into something pretty intense.
Yeah.
The idea of relocating like 1.5 million people
Wow.
from Gaza.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
I mean, that's like almost the entire population of Nebraska uprooted, and possibly resettled somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking, isn't it? And it raises so many questions like, about if it's even possible.
Yeah.
And is it ethical? What are the long-term consequences for everybody involved?
For sure, absolutely. So just to kind of set the stage here, Gaza is, well, it's in a really bad situation after this brutal 15-month war with Israel.
Yeah.
And we're actually looking at this CBS News article that goes into President Trump's suggestion
Okay.
to relocate this Palestinian population
Right.
and reaction from the Arab world,
Yeah.
And we're not here to like take sides,
Of course.
but to, really get a handle on how complicated this proposal is and
Right.
what it could mean for the future of this whole region. So
Yeah, I think it's important to start with the historical context,
yeah.
This idea of relocating Palestinians isn't actually a new idea.
Okay.
It's been suggested before. And it always sparks like this really intense debate.
Yeah.
And, this time around, President Trump's advocating for it. And he's pointing to the devastation in Gaza, claiming it's literally a demolition site, is what he said.
Yeah, and he's even quoted as saying, I'd love for you to take on more when he's speaking to other countries. So
Yeah.
it seems like he's kind of suggesting that, other countries should take on the responsibility of absorbing all of these displaced people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where it gets really, complicated. Like, who
Yeah.
would take in 1.5 million people?
Right.
Trump has kind of pointed to Egypt and Jordan,
Yeah.
as possibilities. But the article makes it clear that they, along with a bunch of other Arab nations, have, completely rejected the proposal.
Yeah, and there's this strong joint statement from like Arab diplomats in Cairo, and they really lay out all their concerns. So they're
Yeah.
basically saying that relocation is a threat to regional stability, could escalate the conflict, and it could also like undermine any chance for peace in the region.
Yeah, they're basically arguing that if Palestinians are forced to leave Gaza, it sets like a dangerous precedent.
Right.
That can make it even harder to find a lasting solution to this, decades-long conflict.
Yeah. And then there are those practical concerns that we were kind of talking about earlier,
Right.
like, the logistics of moving that many people,
Right.
the housing resources,
Yeah.
the potential strain on economies that are, already struggling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And let's not forget about security risks too.
Oh, yeah.
Like Egypt, for example.
Yeah.
They've been dealing with this insurgency in the Sinai Peninsula for years,
Right.
And an influx of refugees could destabilize that region
Right.
even more and create a whole host of new challenges for both Egypt and Israel.
So it seems like the Arab world is basically saying no to relocation,
Right.
like they're putting their foot down.
Yeah.
But what are they saying?
Right.
What are they offering up as like an alternative?
Yeah, well, they're pushing for a just and comprehensive peace
Okay.
based on this two-state solution, which, has been like this main idea in peace negotiations for decades now.
Right.
Right? They're calling for help internationally
Yeah.
to rebuild Gaza and make sure that Palestinians can stay on their land.
But is a two-state solution like even possible at this point?
Right.
We have to think about the current political climate and like the deep mistrust between the two sides.
Right.
So is that framework even still relevant?
Yeah.
Or do we need to kind of reevaluate, what a peaceful solution might even look like?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, the two-state solution, even though it's familiar, it's faced some major obstacles, right?
Right.
So we need to look at if it's really a realistic path forward. Or do we need to think about other approaches that might be more effective for achieving a lasting peace?
So we have these two very different visions for the future of Gaza.
Yeah.
We've got relocation, which is being met with a lot of resistance.
Yeah,
And then we have that traditional two-state solution, which
Right.
has its own challenges.
exactly.
So it seems like we're at a real crossroads here.
Exactly. And the path we choose will have a huge impact, right?
Yeah.
On the lives of millions of people
Yeah.
and on the stability of this whole region. So
This deep dive is already raising so many questions for me,
Yeah.
and I'm really interested to explore like these potential pathways to peace
Right.
and really unpack how complicated this situation really is.
Absolutely.
So, what are the most like viable options here?
Yeah.
What role can the international community play? And can we actually break this cycle of violence and like find a lasting resolution?
Yeah. I think those are all great questions, and we'll definitely get into all that. So
Awesome. All right, let's say
yeah. Let's take a quick break, and
sounds good.
we'll come back and we'll
Yeah.
really unpack this.
Awesome.
It feels like we've been talking about this two-state solution for like forever
Yeah.
with very little progress.
Yeah.
Is there any reason to believe that this time could be different? Like, what would it actually take to make it work?
It's true. I mean, it's faced some major roadblocks, but it's still the most widely endorsed framework for peace, you know?
Okay.
The challenge is, like, in the details,
Okay.
things like borders, security, the
Mhm.
status of Jerusalem, and the rights of refugees.
Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty big hurdles. The
Yeah.
CBS article touches on like the Arab world's vision for this two-state solution.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious to hear, like, what do you think? What would a truly just and like comprehensive peace actually look like?
Well, any two-state solution that could actually work would require, like, major compromises from both sides.
Okay.
It would involve establishing a sovereign Palestinian state next to Israel.
With, agreed upon borders that ensure security for both populations.
Okay, yeah, that sounds, like, pretty straightforward. But I imagine, like, figuring out those details is where it gets really tricky. So,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
like the status of Jerusalem,
Oh, yeah.
for example.
Yeah, that's always been a major sticking point.
Right.
Absolutely. Jerusalem is a holy city for both Jews and Muslims.
Yeah.
And finding a solution that satisfies both sides is going to be, like, incredibly difficult.
Right.
It might involve, like, some kind of shared sovereignty,
Okay.
with guarantees for access to, like, religious sites for all faiths.
And then we have the issue of settlements, too.
Right.
Those Jewish communities have been built in the West Bank, which, the Palestinians claim as part of their future state.
Right.
So how do you address that in a two-state solution?
Yeah. The settlements are a major obstacle to peace.
Okay.
I mean, under international law, they're considered illegal.
Right.
And a lot of experts think that they would need to be dismantled or at least like significantly scaled back
Right.
as part of a peace agreement.
Right.
But this is like a really sensitive issue for Israel.
Yeah.
And reaching a compromise is going to be very, very challenging.
Yeah. The article also mentions, like, the rights of Palestinian refugees,
Yeah.
many of whom were displaced from their homes during the conflict. So
Right.
how would a two-state solution address that?
Yeah, the right of return for Palestinian refugees is like a deeply emotional and really complex issue.
Right.
A just and comprehensive peace would need to like address this in some way,
Okay.
potentially through some combination of compensation, resettlement options, and maybe even like a limited right of return to the Palestinian state.
So it sounds like achieving a two-state solution would require, like, navigating all these really sensitive issues
Yeah.
and making incredibly difficult compromises.
Yeah.
So is there any reason to believe that the two sides can actually get over these obstacles?
I mean, it's a daunting task for sure.
Yep.
But it's important to remember that seemingly intractable conflicts have been resolved in the past.
Okay.
It requires strong leadership,
Right.
political will, and a genuine commitment to peace from both sides.
Right. The article really emphasizes the Arab world's call for international support
Yeah.
to rebuild Gaza and ensure that the Palestinians can stay on their land.
Yeah.
So what role could the international community play
Yeah.
in facilitating a peaceful resolution, whether it's a two-state solution or, like, some other alternative?
The international community has a really important role to play in supporting these peace efforts.
Okay.
This could involve providing financial assistance for rebuilding Shu,
Okay.
mediating between the two sides,
Okay.
and helping to create like conditions that are good for peace,
Okay.
such as promoting economic development and addressing, humanitarian needs.
So beyond the traditional two-state solution,
Yeah.
are there any other, like, potential pathways to peace that are being considered?
Yeah, there have been discussions about like other models,
Okay.
such as a confederation
Okay.
or like a single binational state with equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians.
Okay.
However, these ideas are often met with resistance from both sides,
Right.
and they face significant political and logistical challenges.
So it seems like the two-state solution, even with all of its flaws and the difficulty of making it actually happen,
Yeah.
still remains like the most viable option that's actually on the table.
Yeah, I think so.
But even if the two sides were to like reach some agreement,
Yeah.
wouldn't there still be a need for like deep reconciliation and trust building to actually achieve lasting peace?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A peace agreement is just the first step.
Right.
Building trust and understanding between Israelis and Palestinians who've been in this conflict for generations is essential for long-term stability and coexistence.
Right.
You know, this would require addressing past injustices, promoting dialogue and cultural exchange, and finding ways to, like, heal the deep wounds caused by this conflict.
I mean, that sounds like a monumental task.
Yeah.
Rebuilding Gaza is one thing,
Yeah.
but rebuilding trust and fostering genuine reconciliation
Right.
seems like a totally different beast.
It is a monumental task, but it's not impossible.
Okay.
I mean, there are inspiring examples from all over the world
Yeah.
where communities have overcome, these deep divisions and built a shared future together.
Right.
It requires a shift in mindset,
Yeah.
a willingness to forgive, and a commitment to building a future where both sides can thrive.
It's pretty clear that this conflict is like so complex,
Yeah.
with these deep historical roots and all
Right.
these like interconnected issues.
Yeah, it's a web. Yeah.
It feels like there are no easy answers,
Right.
and any way forward is going to require those like tough compromises
Yeah.
and a willingness to, face these ingrained beliefs and narratives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not just about like drawing lines on a map or like writing up agreements. It's about like, addressing those underlying causes of this conflict.
Right.
The fears and grievances that
Yeah.
have fueled like generations of this animosity.
And this CBS article doesn't really get into like the human side of this.
Yeah.
It focuses on like the political moves and those immediate reactions to Trump's proposal.
Right.
But I'm thinking, like, what does it actually mean for everyday Israelis and Palestinians to live with this conflict
Yeah.
every day? How does it shape their lives?
Yeah.
Their perceptions of each other, their hopes for the future.
Yeah, that's a really crucial aspect that often gets overlooked in those like broader political discussions.
Right.
Imagine like growing up in a place where violence and mistrust are just like normal parts of life, where security checkpoints and walls are like everywhere,
Right.
where the threat of conflict is always there.
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine, like, what that must be like. And it makes me wonder, how do you build trust and understanding when there's been so much pain
Right.
and suffering on both sides?
Yeah, it's a long and really hard process,
Yeah.
It requires empathy,
Right.
a willingness to listen to each other's stories and like recognize that shared humanity
Yeah.
that connects us,
Yeah.
Despite our differences.
Yeah.
It means like challenging the narratives of fear and demonization that have been around for decades.
So if relocation is off the table,
Right.
as the Arab world's saying,
Yeah.
and the traditional two-state solution is facing all of these obstacles,
Right.
where do we go from here?
Oh, yeah.
What are the most realistic paths to peace and stability in this region?
Yeah. That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Maybe it's time to like reframe this whole conversation
Okay.
to move beyond these like fixed positions
Yeah.
and like explore some new possibilities.
Yeah.
It might mean focusing on like smaller, achievable steps
Okay.
that build trust and cooperation. It could mean empowering like local communities
Right.
and civil society organizations that are already working on the ground to like bridge these divides and promote reconciliation.
So maybe it's about like shifting the focus away from those big political solutions
Yeah.
and more towards like those everyday interactions and relationships
Right.
that could slowly break down that mistrust.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about creating spaces for dialogue
Yeah.
and cultural exchange
Yeah.
and shared experiences
Yeah.
that can help people on both sides see each other as like human beings
Yeah.
and not just enemies.
Right.
It's about like fostering a sense of shared destiny,
Yeah.
recognizing that their fates are like intertwined
Yeah.
and that peace and security for one side is impossible without peace and security for the other.
This deep dive has really like opened my eyes to the complexities of this conflict, and it's clear that there's no like quick fix,
Right.
no easy answer
No magic formula. Yeah.
to achieving peace, but maybe by having these honest conversations.
Right.
Acknowledging the pain and suffering on both sides
Right.
and like exploring these new ways of relating to each other. If we can start to like build a path towards a more hopeful future.
I think that's a really powerful takeaway.
Yeah.
We may not have all the answers, but
Yeah.
the search for peace requires us to keep paying attention,
Right.
to be willing to learn,
Hmm.
and to never give up on the possibility of a better future.
It's a good reminder that peace isn't just like the absence of war,
Right.
but the presence of justice, understanding, and a shared commitment to building a world where everyone can live in dignity and security.
Yeah.
And that's a vision worth striving for, even when we're facing these like seemingly impossible challenges.
Absolutely. And I think that's the most important message, right? Pursuing peace is a constant journey.
Yeah.
It's a commitment to never giving up hope and a belief in the power of human connection, even when things are really, really dark.
Well, that's a perfect place to end our deep dive for today. So,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
And to all of our listeners out there, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
So yeah.